Judge Dredd, Dredd vs. Death, was a game released in the year 2003 for the Europeans, and then in 2005 for the Americans. The game was sold for the Xbox, PlayStation 2, GameCube, and PC. Now, this has nothing to do with anything, but do you guys remember the GameCube? I was like a kid when that released, and up until that point, my experience in gaming was limited to things like Toy Story on the Nintendo 64, or like Driver on the PlayStation 1. I remember my mom at the time worked as an accountant for the local Circuit City offices in the Richmond area. She took me to the actual Circuit City store not far from there to buy a new game console, and I had settled on the GameCube. Anyway, back to the point at hand. My first experience with Dredd vs. Death was actually on my GameCube. I had found a copy at our local movie gallery, and my mom rented it for me. I had no idea who Judge Dredd was or what was going on in the world. My only knowledge of the world at the time came from the 1995 film starring Sylvester Stallone, and I know that movie was wildly off the mark in many ways, but I thought it was an enjoyable film. The 2012 film with Carl Urban was goated though, and you should definitely watch it. Back to the point. So, for the uninitiated, the world of Judge Dredd was introduced to the general public in the British comic anthology 2000 AD. More specifically, he appeared in the second edition of the comic and has remained its most popular and consistent character. Full name, Judge Joseph Dredd, lives in Mega City 1, a vast metropolis that stretches from the old cities of Boston to Washington, D.C., with much of the world having been devastated by nuclear war, leaving it largely desolate and known as the Cursed Earth. As the name suggests, there are other megacities, with one in the area of Texas and another in the area of LA. There are also others on other continents and even one on the moon, but that's not important
right now.
As what is commonly referred to as a street judge, Dredd patrols the city streets and seeks out the disgusting criminal underworld of the metropolis. The world is very grim. Some might even say it is dark. In general, it kinda sucks. Crime is a constant, with judges only able to respond to roughly 6% of crime. As such, trials and court dates are kinda just thrown out the window. So judges, this world's version of cops, are empowered to hand out punishments for crimes on the spot and without any due process. Punishments are in turn pretty harsh, oftentimes just carrying a straight death penalty. Did I mention this world kinda sucks? Prisons do exist, they are called isocubes, but based on what I know and what I have been told, it would seem that sometimes death is better. Plot. The story follows Judge Dredd as he combats a strange plague hinted at by a premonition from the famous Judge Anderson, a variety of strange creatures, and the infamous Judge Death himself, or itself. It takes you all over Mega City 1 and even to an alternate dimension. The plot, despite all that, is pretty simple and doesn't really reinvent the wheel or anything like that, but it is solid and it does its job at keeping you interested in the game and proceeding through the many levels. Gameplay. The gameplay of Dredd vs. Death is without question the highlight of the entire experience. I thoroughly enjoyed the gunplay and the feeling of the weapons themselves. The game boasts some interesting mechanics, including something of a reputation system. This law meter tracks you as you perform certain actions. The meter will rise and fall depending on how well you do. Successfully subduing and arresting criminals raises the meter in a positive light. Butchering innocents or fellow judges obviously lowers the meter. Drop it down to 0 and the Justice Department will send what is effectively a death squad to take you down. I found this mechanic interesting. Being able to arrest people and send them to jail for like 5 years for smoking or loitering was pretty heavy-handed, and it fit right in with a Judge Dredd video game. There was just simply no way that you were going to have a video game about Judge Dredd where you don't get to arrest people or send them to really egregious, over-the-top prison sentences, or just flat out execute them for slightly mundane crimes.
Spread out!
Don't mess him with the yeah,
Freeze!
Rocket!
Stand down, Dredd.
I'm sorry, but what? How did that lower the law meter? The crime was attempted murder of a judge. The sentence is death. Carl Urban said so himself. Do you mean to tell me that when Judge Anderson blasted Jay Schlatt in the face right here, she was committing a crime? And Judge Dredd just stood there and watched her do it? I'm not really buying that. Clearly the developers did not go forward in time and watch a movie made 9 years after they developed this game. So when she did it, did her law meter go down too?
Stand down.
But in all seriousness, the crime system is very welcome in this game, and I really did enjoy it. Even if there were some small discrepancies between video game and film, I still did enjoy sending people to some really over-the-top jail sentences, and really just being heavy-handed with the whole thing. But I can't help but wonder, where do all the handcuffs come from?
years, lawbreaker. You're going down. 10 years. 10 years, lawbreaker. Life in prison.
When you arrest someone, the game displays their name, some other personal info, as well as the specific crimes you're charging them with, and the appropriate punishments. The amount of life sentences I handed out in a single playthrough were actually pretty ridiculous. If I could complain about one component of the gameplay, it is the weapon variety. There's simply not that many weapons in the game. Now, we could easily split the weapons of the game into two separate categories, judge and civilian, which is precisely what I'm going to do, which is why I mentioned it. Judge weapons. These are the Lawgiver pistol, the Arbitrator shotgun, and the Law Rod rifle. Now these are pretty self-explanatory with some minor exceptions. The Arbitrator shotgun, obviously, is a shotgun. Pump action, one of the best weapons in the game, easily my favorite. The Law Rod rifle does boast something of a mechanic to itself. You can either fire the rifle in full auto mode, or you could switch it to a semi-automatic firing mode, which makes use of the scope and effectively turns it into a sniper rifle. The Lawgiver pistol is by far the most interesting weapon in the entire game. It is the one you spawn with at the beginning of every single mission, and it is a judge's weapon of choice and one that they always carry with them everywhere that they go. Similar to the Law Rod, the Lawgiver pistol boasts some interesting mechanics as well. You could swap between various firing modes, such as bullets that bounce, bullets that set things on fire, bullets that pierce through body armor, and bullets that just simply explode. There's also a standard burst mode, but honestly, I often found myself just using the armor-piercing rounds above anything else. Civilian weapons, this category we could knock out pretty easily. The handgun is just a handgun. The pump shotgun is just a pump shotgun. The machine gun is a machine gun. The laser rifle is probably the only thing that has a bit of a different mechanic going for it in this category, because you could charge the weapon to deal extra damage, but that's about it. There's also a grenade launcher, which you get towards the end of the game. The game has basically all the essentials you would expect to find in a shooter. You have your pistols, your rifles, your shotguns, and there really isn't much beyond that. Nor do the weapons themselves do anything particularly new, with the exception of the judge weapons that I had mentioned before. As for enemy variety, there's actually quite a bit. It's not so much that there are many different types of enemies, it's more like the amount itself is low, but the difference between them is rather immense. I'll delve further into that, and each enemy as they appear, to avoid spoiling anything too early. Believe me, this game gets a little hog wild. The story begins with you assuming the control of Judge Dredd. Shocker, and going through a sort of reevaluation to see if you're still capable of being a street judge. It's a decent excuse for a tutorial, being far less contrived than some games that either provide no reason or simply lazy with it. Nevertheless, we proceed through the training mission and we complete it in good time, making our way out of the tutorial and into the proper game. We begin with a routine day at the office for Judge Joseph Dredd, disbanding protesters because freedom of speech is cringe, and then arresting graffiti artists because they're lame, foiling a bank robbery, and then encountering a horde of vicious and bloodthirsty vampires. As you do. I kid you not though, the obstacles of this mission appear in that order specifically. Loud people, bad artists, bad thieves, vampires. We end the first mission after eliminating all the vampires that are causing a muck in this district of the city. Control, the recurring character that guides us through our objectives, radios in that there's an ongoing riot at a nearby prison. With that, we set off for the prison and the game's second mission. As stated before, Mission 2 takes place in a prison within Mega City 1. You make your way through, hunting down vampires and escaped prisoners along the way. Now, something that's odd, the prisoners all have guns, and I really don't know why, partially for obvious reasons. This is a prison. Mainly, it's because the firearms that the judges use are specifically coded to their DNA. Nobody with a different genetic sample can use their weapons. On top of that, all the weapons used by the prisoners during the riot are civilian weapons, so I can't help but wonder where they all came from. Now, I could understand that in a prison like this, in a city like Mega City 1, a few weapons, a few firearms may slip through the cracks. But this many, one for every prisoner in the riot, I'm not really buying it. I'd expect more bits of wood or lead pipes or weights stolen from the workout yard, but I'm splitting hairs here and I'm really getting sidetracked. All things considered, it's not the most exciting level. It's more of the same. You're fighting through vampires. There's more human enemies in this level with guns that shoot back at you. But other than that, it's nothing you haven't faced before. Finally, we work our way to the very bottom of the prison, to the cell that contains the dark judges. Now, as stated before, I'm not a full-blown expert on Judge Dredd lore. I've never read any of the comic books. I've watched the movies, and obviously I've played this game, but I don't know much about the deep world building that surrounds it. Having said that, what I can gather from the information I have available is that the Dark Judges hail from a place called Dead World. It was at one point not that different from ours, or at the very least, it was not that different from the world that Judge Dredd lives in. In this alternate dimension, the judges came to the conclusion that only the living commit crime. Therefore, all life should be deemed illegal and eradicated. Maybe the comics give more of an explanation, but again, I wouldn't really know that. The game gives us a demonstration of what they are capable of even in their most weakened state when they are trapped inside these specially sealed containers. We are shown their escape through a cutscene that actually really scared me when I was a child.
Emergency release activated.
Now, sinner, prepare to be judged. The crime is life. The sentence is death.
Rock.
Okay, maybe I'm just being a tad lazy, but I'm getting the impression that if I don't speed this up a little bit, we might be here for quite a while, and this video is already pretty long as it is. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of speed run the missions from here on out. With the Dark Judges now on the loose, we don't know where they are or what they're up to. We're forced to wait for them to emerge and expose themselves. In the meantime, we investigate any lead we could come across to find where they are or what they might have planned. We are dispatched to the city harbor to investigate reports of the Death Cult. The Death Cult is a group of frankly insane people who genuinely believe the Dark Judges are the best solution to this world's problems, and that through them, they can usher in a lifeless utopia. As usual, we blast our way through various street goons and cultists, arresting those who surrender as any good cop would, and pursuing our mission goal. Here, we encounter some homeless vagrants who, for whatever reason, don't respond at all when you tell them to surrender for arrest, even if they've committed a crime. I don't mean this in the sense that they're bugged or broken in any way. I mean they legitimately just ignore you. They don't respond really at all. And since there's no way for us to subdue them through non-lethal means, we have a gun, and the melee attacks usually kill in one hit, we're forced to just kind of let them go and deal with it. We fight our way through the nearest leader of the cult, the main boss of this mission, who I can only really name as a guy in a suit. He does not go quietly, and we are forced to put him down. With his death, we are given reports of a disturbance at a nearby mall, which leads us to the next mission. Mission 4, as stated before, takes place in a mall. The mall is infested with zombies. Yes, zombies. So that means we have a Judge Dredd game with dumb criminals, vampires, evil shadowy spirit ghosts, death cultists, and now zombies. I think that alone kinda sells this game, but we'll continue with this review regardless. So this mission gives us a grand example of the game's well-made gunplay. Armed with our trusty lawgiver and actually an arbitrator shotgun to start the mission, we blast our way through these zombies. The undead are not nearly as bullet spongy as the vampires. They go down with just a few body shots or one good shot to the head, as you would expect. I feel like this level is designed with the shotgun in mind, given that you are given one at the very start of the level. You'll find plenty of shotgun ammo along the way. My guess is whoever designed this level was sort of on their Doom grind set and wanted you to just kind of run and gun through this vicious hive of capitalism. Sadly, this mission is not all victories. At several points, we are given perhaps the worst objective one could get in this game: escorting NPCs. These highlight one major downfall of the game: the AI. They struggle to follow you, often getting stuck on corners. They like to run in front of you when you're shooting, and they often freeze in place. Usually this occurs when you lead a group of civilians into the drop-off area, and they kind of bottleneck on themselves. They pile up right on the edge of the trigger boundary, and one of them usually freezes in place right along the edge. So you can't bait them out of position and then lure them around the group, they just stand there. This happened to me several times, and I quickly found a solution that worked pretty well. Bad AI aside, we save most of the people in the mall, and we depart for a nearby laboratory, one that is experimenting on reviving dead pets. Judge Dredd, after taking care of the incident at the mall, makes his way to the Icarus labs, investigating reports of a security breach. Here we uncover some bizarre experiments regarding the research being conducted by the scientists there. We show up, then immediately arrest the first humanoid we see, a robot receptionist just trying to do his job.
You're taking a 3-month vacation.
Then we make our way through the waves of vampires and rogue scientists. As we move through, we smash some control panels. Now this is another kind of rabbit hole subject, but has anybody ever really given some thought to that whole trope in movies and video games, TV shows, whatever, where if you smash a control panel, particularly if you break it with your fists in a really dramatic and aggressive fashion, it just suddenly does what you hoped it would do? Oh, the door won't open. Smash the control panel. The door comes open. It's like, I don't know, man. I feel like if you did it, you just have a broken control panel and the door would still be closed and now you can't open it. No. I think that's how that would realistically play out. We find the head researcher, who injects himself with an infinite health potion. Then he runs away. We break out the now burning and crumbling labs, evacuating into the underground sewers. Entering the sewers, we encounter members of the death cult. They obviously open fire, and for that they pay the price of their actions. We blast our way to the surface and rescue a stranded judge. We then escort him to a designated evacuation point, or at the very least we take him about 99% of the way until he gets stuck on a wall.
Hey pal, you just blowing from Stupid Town?
And then we leave him behind. We reach our transport and we get out of there. In the next mission, we're dropped off at a hospital. We enter, immediately start blasting our way through the central lobby. One big important note to make about the central lobby area: the zombies in there will continuously respawn. If you kill them all and then leave the room, when you come back, it's guaranteed that there will be at least one zombie in the room for you to kill. You have to rescue every single civilian on this level. And if you remember the point I made earlier about the buggy AI in this game, you could imagine that this level, perhaps the worst in the entire game, simply because you're constantly running people around. They get stuck on a wall, stuck on a piece of debris on the ground, or they just flat out reach the point where you need to drop them off and then they just stop moving and they never work again. Fortunately though, we employ our tried and tested, old reliable method. We fight our way to the end of the level, some bizarrely arranged chamber that has a central room and then 4 smaller rooms on each corner of that. And each of the 4 smaller rooms is a single individual who are being held there by Judge Mortis, the first of the dark judges we will be facing in the game. Now you're not supposed to kill him. Should you do so, Judge Mortis will turn back into his ghost form and he will escape and you will have failed the mission. Instead, what you have to do is break open various pipes within the room and fill it with a gas that disables Judge Mortis. Before you can release this gas, however, you must get all 4 of the hostages out of the room. The problem is that Judge Mortis will be attacking you in this entire process and he can one-shot all of the civilians. You have to be very mindful of how you get them out. Aside from that, his attacks are very basic and extremely easy to dodge. We get as many of the hostages out as we can. We break open the pipes and release the gas. We disable Judge Mortis and we take him prisoner, and then we escape the hospital. That's 1 dark judge down, 3 more to go. And the next one on our list is Judge Fire. The next level is perhaps one of the shortest ones in the game, the Smokatorium. The Smokatorium itself is basically a lounge for people to sit around and, as you can imagine, smoke. Whether that be cigarettes, hookahs, you name it. There are vending machines on the wall that display areas, and as you can guess, there are sophisticated fire deterrent apparatuses in this entire building. Now, when you immediately enter the level, Judge Fire appears and starts running amok through the entire building, terrorizing the people that are there, and in particular trying to kill you. You have to work your way down to a control level where you set the building to its emergency settings. You activate the sprinkler system, which forces Judge Fire to flee to the next level of the facility. You do this on each level until you eventually force him to the uppermost floor, where you activate a ventilation system that snuffs out his fire and weakens him to a state where you can capture his spirit. That's 2 dark judges down, 2 more to go. From the Smokatorium, we head to a place called Rizek, or is it Resec? It's a place where the bodies of the dead within Mega City 1 are recycled into various necessary materials, such as fertilizer or perhaps even food. As you can imagine, this place has a huge draw for the likes of Judge Death, because death is in his name. As you make your way through the facility, you encounter various zombies and vampires along the way. At the very end, you encounter an angry Judge Death. You combat him, and he escapes. You chase him into a mysterious underground city-like location called the Undercity. Seeing that the Undercity was sent beneath the earth by the same nuclear war that created the need for the megacities and established the cursed earth their high walls protect them from. We reach a destroyed museum at the end of the level, and we encounter not Judge Death, but Judge Fear. This fight is actually pretty difficult, given the amount and strength of the ads that surround Judge Fear. However, despite the immense obstacle that he presents himself as, we overcome him. Find that Judge Death has captured Judge Anderson, a psychic judge and the leader of the Justice Department's Psy-Ops division. Judge Anderson is a prominent character in the comic books, having extremely powerful telepathic abilities and becoming the head of the Justice Department's Psy-Ops. Psy-Ops being a group of judges who have similar telepathic ability. However, this power makes Judge Anderson and other judges like her vulnerable to the influence and the schemes of the likes of Judge Death. We follow Judge Death through the portal, pursuing him into his dead world. Here we hope to rescue Judge Anderson, capture Judge Death, putting an end to its reign of terror once and for all. Dead World is suitable for its name. Corpses of dead animals and other such creatures litter the ground, their bones like spires in the desert sands. It would seem that there are no megacities in this planet. The cursed earth has all but subsumed them all. We pursue Judge Death further and further into his lair, encountering skeletons, zombies, and vampires along the way. We fight to a large structure, which has a large beam of energy at its center. Inside we find Judge Death and Judge Anderson, and he's sucking the mental energy both out of her and out of the other judges of the Psy-Ops division which he has captured. He reveals that through the chemicals created at the Icarus Labs by the head researcher, Judge Death has found a way to transcend his physical form. The only way we can kill him is by avoiding him, freeing the Psy-Ops judges as well as Judge Anderson, and allowing them to take Judge Death down through their combined mental strength. After taking down Judge Death and finally putting an end to this entire ordeal, the judges all escape through a portal that returns them back to their world. After putting down the greatest threat Megacity 1, and really the entire world has ever faced, Judge Dredd is given a pat on the back and a brief commendation by his superiors. However, much like always, Judge Dredd, content with where he is back on his Lawmaster motorcycle and rides off into the distance, putting an end to just another day in the office for Judge Joseph Dredd. And that's Judge Dredd. Dredd vs. Death. My final verdict on the game, 8 out of 10. It's a classic, I love it, and it's a perfect example of classic shooters, and I think anybody who's a fan of games from that era would more than enjoy this title. Alright, well, that's the end of the video. Easily the longest and most sophisticated video I've ever made, and to be quite frank, I don't know if I'll really ever do this again. At least probably not to this extent. Having said that though, I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope that it helped you decide whether or not you would like to give this game a try. If you knew about the game already and have an opinion on it, feel free to share that in the comments. I would love to hear. If you think that I'm wrong and completely full of it, go ahead and tell me that as well. I enjoy the engagement and I look forward to seeing what you guys think in the comment section below. Also, please, if you feel I've earned it, go ahead and give this video a like and subscribe to my channel. It lets me know that you guys are interested in videos like this and gives me an idea of how to grow the channel and the community around it, and I would really appreciate that insight. Having said that, I hope you guys take good care of yourselves, and above all else, be good to one another.